And then it becomes more kids. You know, when you run the chair, you get another.
They got it. They got it. Yeah.
Oh. I used to be an accident.
Good. Good, Marcia, you good?
I'm good.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call to order our regular monthly meeting of the Village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees. We have Trustee Carver will not be joining us this evening. Everyone else is present. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
I do have one. I actually don't know if those would go under old business or new, but we have a quote from EDR for more zoning study assistance.
Wanted to do that under your report.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that.
Any other items to add or subtract?
And I have one for fire for the contract for the new truck.
You have a contract to sign?
Yeah.
You have a contract to sign?
Yeah, yes, it's in the Dropbox.
Cool.
When was the premise referendum? Was that the second meeting last month?
Yes, yes. So if 30 days, well, from publishing.
Hey, any other changes to the agenda? Item number 3 is our consent agenda, which includes our monthly abstract of claims as well as meeting minutes from
Just 410, the organizational meeting.
the 4/10/2023 organizational meeting. The abstract includes a general fund abstract totaling $89,928.06. Water fund abstract totaling $14,956.27. Sewer fund abstract totaling $33,917.50. Trust and agency abstract of just $2,762.77. And so I would entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
So moved.
No second. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Just pick two.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments on either the abstract or the minutes? Hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And the consent agenda is adopted. Item number 4 is our first public comment period, privilege of the floor. We normally limit these regular public comment periods to 15 minutes total. I don't generally like to limit individual speakers when at all possible. However, since we have a fair number of folks in attendance, I think what we'll do is offer one go around at 3 minutes apiece. And if no one raises their hand, then someone else can go, and we'll at least allow the allotted 15 minutes. But if we go over that, we'll have allowed for everyone the opportunity to speak at 3 minutes apiece. So with that, anyone who would like to offer public comment, please state your name. You do not need to state your address, but who wants to go first? Sure. If you're online and would like to offer public comment, please use the raise hand feature in the Zoom chat.
Jen, I just want to say, if it's the same mic, you have to really.
You have to get up on it.
So the people on the Zoom.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Wofford. I live in the village. Our residence is a duplex, and I'm here to talk about the zoning changes. I was a landlord for several years, so I understand the need for more, much more housing, affordable or non-affordable, in the village. So I'm very much in support of affordable housing. And I also wanted to, having been on the planning board for almost 6 years, thank the committee for the work that they did to get the zoning draft where it is now. I'm in support of affordable housing, but I am against commercial development by investors who care nothing about our community. And we know that happens. As I said, I was on the village planning board here in Trumansburg for almost 6 years. And I was chair of that planning board for almost 5 or more. I don't even know at this point. And I'm here tonight in support of the village's planning board's August 2022 letter to the Board of Trustees recommending changes to the draft of the zoning law now in discussion. And I'm not sure that the draft on the table takes the village's own planning board recommendations fully into account. And I just wanted to remind everyone that there is no rush here. In spite of the fact that it is the planning board that is the first interpreter of the zoning law after the code enforcement officer for any new development. During my time on the planning board, I saw a fundamental disconnect between the comprehensive plan and the zoning law. The comprehensive plan was in every circumstance irrelevant when zoning law comes into play. Zoning is the law. The comprehensive plan is simply the spirit of a community. It's necessary, if we want the comprehensive plan to mean anything, to take it into consideration before zoning becomes law. Here is the August 2022 Village of Trumansburg Planning Board's recommendations and feedback to the current draft of the zoning code. The planning board's recommendations are right in line with the vocal community members' feedback. Number 1, although the community's understanding, based on the explicit language of the new comprehensive plan, was that the zoning revision is supposed to ensure implementation of the plan, the proposed adoption of a single residential zone fundamentally rejects the plan's commitment to preserving neighborhood distinctiveness. Number 2, with no modeling or other tools to demonstrate the actual impact of the proposed changes, it is impossible for the community and the board to understand the visual, traffic, services, and other impacts that could result. Number 3, zoning changes of this magnitude require a full environmental impact assessment, which, under secret regulations, should not be done until all segments of the proposed zoning revision are available for review and analysis. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Menino, and I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming out for this. This month is May 1st is Law Day, and every day in May is Law Day. And this year the focus is on difficult discussions, difficult decisions, and civic responsibility. So it's great to see everybody out. I thank the zoning committee, and I am in support of the zoning. Thank you.
My name is Don Ellis. I've taken a fairly technical look at the zoning ordinance. I've read each of the issues of it as they were released through this long period. And it hasn't really moved around much. It's pretty clear where it was going, and it finally got there. I think it has several very large problems that are readily addressable, so nothing disastrous. I'll give you a good example. the flag lot ordinance falls under the general 301 table about residential uses. So if you had a flag lot, and the flag portion was larger than 37,500 square feet, that's less than an acre. If you're wondering, it's more than 3/4 of an acre, but it's not a whole acre. If it had that much space by the 301 table, 5 units could be developed on that. So imagine you have a driveway 30 feet wide, maybe as long as 400 feet. There are 5 dwelling units at the end of this driveway, which means 10 cars. This stuff about, 1 residence, 1 parking space is silly. I would suspect if I walked past the houses of all of the board members on my way home, I would discover nowhere where there was only 1 car parked. And that is, in many cases in the village, there are 3 or 4. So here you have a long, long driveway, 30 feet wide, going back to a unit that's in the backyards of the people on the right, the people on the left, the people behind. It's going to have maybe, 10 vehicles and 5 people living back there. There could also be an ADU, by the way, as the zoning ordinance is written. So you could have 11 units at the end of a long driveway. This kind of thing really needs to be looked at. 4 years ago, there was a conversation that spread among people in the village about having housing, about those people who work here and cannot afford to buy or rent here. I'm totally in sympathy, was then, remain that way, as many of you, I'm sure, are. We need to do something about it. But I would say, I've said here before quite a few times, if the trustees want to house lower wage earners, there's abundant opportunity to build housing on the land the village itself owns. It's on Main Street. What a perfect place for housing. What a perfect place for housing for people with smaller means. They can use public transportation. They can walk to all kinds of things. It's a perfect housing location. It is so much better than backyards. And backyards are almost the only thing that the zoning ordinance offers. Backyards, in some cases, side yards for additional housing. We could do so much better. Other things in the ordinance, I think it really needs to take on the drainage issues. I understand that the seeker review that was done on the 28th was not signed off. I hope that's true. I think there really should be a village effort to bring out the people, in particular, the individuals who have contacted the village about their own drainage problems. They should be explicitly invited to come to the seeker meeting and be made aware of all of what goes on in that kind of review. We have environmental problems. Drainage is one of them, and it should be addressed in seeker. A key factor in the appearance of the village is the spacing of the houses. It used to be space wide enough so you could, grow hay and feed your cows.
10 seconds.
Now, the new ordinance proposes a minimum width, not maximum, minimum width of 40 feet of frontage. I'm not sure, this is kind of Orwellian. So if it's only 40 feet, what would possibly happen? There's 15 feet of setback here, 15 feet there, there's 10 feet to build on. I don't know what the intention is. It'll create chaos, language like this in an ordinance. Imagine people coming to the BZA meeting or to a planning board meeting and wanting to understand why there's a minimum of 40 feet. And what about developers that we really need? Are they going to, what are they going to think about us if we have weird stuff in our zoning ordinance?
I don't think anybody really needs to hear more from me, but I just wanted to read this from the webpage on the village comprehensive plan review zoning revision page. And under FAQs, it says, what is a comprehensive plan? A comprehensive plan is a guiding document that identifies a vision for a community's future and outlines strategies to achieve that vision. A comp plan is not law, but is used to inform how laws, particularly zoning laws, are written. The 2008 comprehensive plan can be found here. Why do we need a comprehensive plan? New York state law strongly encourages villages to adopt comprehensive plans, and over many years, case law has called into question, and in some cases invalidated, laws passed without a comprehensive plan or not in keeping with a comprehensive plan. I know everyone's worked really hard. We've got this great plan, award-winning, and I think the misstep was using our old zoning as the basis for the new zoning. And I think what we really needed to do was take a step back and do a complete rewrite based on what came up in the comprehensive plan. And I think it's really important to keep the unique character areas as defined in the comprehensive plan. And I've asked why we can't do that, and I haven't really gotten a great answer. I think everyone on the committee has done a great job and has done their best. I think zoning can be so complicated that we really could use some professional guidance. I see a lot of zoning out there that just seems more complete and has all the bases covered. I asked Tom some questions, Tom Meyer, and he graciously got back to me. But for instance, I asked, can people pave over their lots completely? And the answer is yes. Can they build buildings over every inch of their property up to the setback and as high as 35 feet and with no front doors facing the street? And the answer is yes. I don't think that's something everybody wants, and other communities have experienced changes in zoning that allowed these things happen just because they weren't complete enough to prevent what we don't want while encouraging what we do want. I think having the distinct areas would also allow for more flexible zoning in some of the undeveloped places. So we could do more interesting things like cottage communities and more of the sort of missing middle zoning that I think people are looking for, duplexes, fourplexes, that would be pedestrian scale and fit into our community. Again, I thank everyone for the responsiveness and answering all our questions. I just think that we have an opportunity here to make zoning as great as our comprehensive plan was. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I wrote a letter, but I'm just gonna read part of it. Rachel Kennedy, I prefer the approach of a single residential zone. I am certainly not unsympathetic to the concerns of people living in certain neighborhoods, but ultimately I think creating districts sets up an in-group, out-group sort of dynamic, more examples of which could be really unpleasant in this small village. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Yeah, Janice.
Janice Broussard. I was happy to hear last time in the meeting that affordable housing was defined in this document is really focusing on subsidized housing. I think when I moved here, we were looking for affordable housing and found that what made it difficult was that it was 10.75% interest on the loan at the time. But we, can manage, and I'm a teacher. So we're not talking about somebody that's independently wealthy. So I think it would behoove everybody to really define affordable. I was probably one of the very few who filled out the initial survey that talked about and indicated about affordable housing. And I did not interpret that to mean subsidized low-income housing. Okay, now they're going to say some positive things. thank you to the police department and the board for the crossing guard that is now at the corner of Wick Street and South Street, because that's a real hazardous intersection with accidents and children trying to walk to school. At one point, I counted the number of cars that went through that intersection, and it's 225 to 250 in about a half an hour period in the morning, and everybody seems to be late and in a hurry. So I'm very happy to see that, thank Joe Nelson or whoever brought this about. I think that's a very positive thing. And I contacted Dusty, and he said that South Street is going to be repaved, which is very necessary because it's just filled with potholes. So I'm very happy to hear that. I'm also happy that the signs that are at the gardens that the garden club take care of have been refurbished. And I think that's a very positive thing for the people entering the village to see. And also thank all the people who worked on the sidewalks by the conservatory. Those have been hazardous for many, many years. And I think that's a real improvement to the village. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Lori Kraus, hi. I'm going to quote Rick Geiger in this letter that came out today. And he's a lawyer here in town. He owns the house across the street from the conservatory. And it's really well stated. It basically explains the frustration I have felt for the last 5 years, because I have gone through and been aware of everything going on for the last 5 years. I've been in the community for 24 years, and I'm also a retired RN after 43 years. And I first want to say that I admire, and this is per Rick's words, the zeal and obvious commitment of the members of the committee, and recognize the extensive time and effort that has gone into producing the draft. But, you know, if I look at it the way I look at things, because I'm not political, y'all know my husband, you know, and I don't pay attention really most of the time. But I do look at things from a medical standpoint. And I'm going to take cancer, for example. Somebody is having pain and they can't find out from this doctor or that doctor. And, you know, if a team doesn't come together and help a person, and if the person doesn't advocate for themselves, and you don't have the community involved, and everybody is not aware, the person ends up with cancer. Okay. And to me, how this has affected my life is sort of like cancer, because I have been aware for 5 years. But I do appreciate the hard work you guys have put in. It just means to me that more hard work needs to take place, and I think we have the time. And so in response to Rachel's comment off of this letter, in creating a new one-size-fits-all residential zone that would substantially increase allowable residential density throughout the village without regard to location. And this one hit home for me. It eviscerates rather than implements the approach of the comprehensive plan. And people need to wake up and understand what that means. And what we've done, we can continue to grow and do better. And you're looking at somebody who's lived in Los Angeles, Chicago. I've lived in planned communities with golf courses. When I first moved here, I went to the elementary school and I said, where's my neighborhood playground? You know, I understand about plan development. I understand about density, and I'm not necessarily against it. But the reason we live here is because this is a beautiful community and people work together and we have loved one another. And I think we can continue. This issue I'm watching tear our community apart. And for me, that is the hardest thing to see. I can't even walk into Garrett's without seeing, oh, they're on this side and they're on this side and they know what I think and I know what they think. And it makes me so uncomfortable, and that breaks my heart. And I have watched all you kids grow up. So That is my feeling.
Kathy Klemperer. I happen to be a member of the zoning revision committee, but I'm speaking now as a resident. I'm having trouble understanding why people are so opposed to a single residential district. In fact, the committee spent a lot of time talking about how to manage manufactured home parks. And suddenly the state came out with a law saying that you can't treat manufactured homes any differently from any other, what they call single family home. So what happens if we have a single residential zone? The only thing that's going to happen is that the old trailer park, which it used to be R2, residential 2, now becomes existing non-conforming because it doesn't conform to the new zoning suggestions. The rest of the village should be completely untouched by it. So I just would need a little more explanation why this is an unpopular idea to have a simple single zone. Hope that made sense.
Any other public comments? Yeah, I have a public comment.
If
Mike?
you get on mic, then they can hear you. They can hear you online, but.
I need you to have the mic, Jules.
Can I get you the mic? Would that be okay?
You need to sit, Jules?
No, it makes his hearing aids
Oh.
hard.
Oh.
Three minutes and go.
I get 10 minutes.
-7.
Yeah, I just want to tell you that I've been living in the village with Patty, same little house on the corner of Halsey in Pennsylvania. And been coming to village board meetings since 1968. And I just want to tell you honestly that you have the best village board that I've seen in the 50+ years that I've been here in this village of happiness and strength and love and friendship. And I say that as a firefighter here in the village. I say that as a firefighter in 5 different fire companies in 5 different communities. I was a zoning officer here in the village. I was a deputy zoning officer in the town of Ulysses. It's a wonderful place to live.
Any other public comments? Just agenda. Loris has a question about the agenda.
Okay, so, sorry, I don't understand some of the workers of the floor, so does that mean that when you get down to 7, zoning law discussion feedback area? This right now is the only time that anyone can express for or against the zoning.
And again.
Until you actually get to number 7.
No, you can wait again until number 9,
Okay,
or you can speak now.
okay, I'm gonna sit.
Any other public comment on anything village related?
By the way, the audio online is good. So.
Good evening, Jerry Kraus. East Seneca Road. I know I didn't give the whole address. You've seen me a lot, you've heard me a lot. Most villagers have probably heard and seen me a lot. I'm Lori's husband, been married for 41 years, raised our family here. We love Trumansburg, and frankly, we love all of you people in this village. And as she said, it really hurts to see the kind of division we're seeing when if we would have been more willing to get into the weeds of some of these discussions, because there's a lot of interrelationships going on here. And when I'm talking about between issues, things like zoning and change and vision for the future with the comp plan and reimagining policing. We're trying to make lots of changes all at once. Everyone is. It's hard. It's not linear. It would be nice if it was a clean, linear, look at the situation, take a survey. This is emotional for people because you're dealing with their, in some cases, livelihoods when you're talking about their property. I do not think there's anyone in this village that does not realize we need more affordable housing and more availability of it. But I'm concerned that the zoning changes, which we're putting a lot of eggs in this basket to fix problems that we've seen society-wide, certainly in New York State and just about every other small town in this county. I agree with people who want to have some more conversation. I think it's worthwhile. There are a few specific things I really have issues with. And in particular, I just want to talk about section 308 in the proposed zoning on ADUs. If you dig down like 4 layers in 308, you'll find the yard setback paragraph, which says it's 15 feet everywhere. Unless you've got a pre-existing non-compliant structure, some old crappy building, 4 feet, 5 feet from your property line, that can now automatically become an ADU. No approvals. Every one of these, and I've counted about 136 of these structures in the village. One is next door to me. I know people think my issues are about my problem. What has been going on with me with the pre-existing non-compliant structure could happen to anybody in this village with all of these structures in the village that are old. But developers know how to build stuff. They can fix anything, believe me. So I have a problem with automatically allowing any of those structures to become a dwelling. They require, in my opinion, a formal review and probably should be looked at in light of, well, here's the other thing. Here's a paragraph on 308 on ADUs, which all flies completely in the face of Article 2, which is about pre-existing non-compliant structures and how you can't touch them until you figure some things out. So I do not want to see that paragraph go through. Beyond the rules themselves, my issue is with enforcement. Consistency, permits being issued on pre-existing non-compliant structures, which according to our own rules should not happen. I just want to see us follow our own rules, be disciplined about it, be thorough about it. Every permit application needs a thorough zoning review. You were a zoning enforcement officer. You probably pull some public records. You probably make sure that
20 seconds here.
Whatever is, lot sizes and all that, and you figure things out. I don't see that happening. So whatever the rules are, let's please follow them. Thank you.
My name is Marlene Darfler, and yes, we're related, so I don't say a lot when I'm up here. What I do want to say is, I hear you saying about the communities being torn apart. You know nothing. This community is so dear. And to have this civil conversation and respectful conversation. I raised him in Lansing. We would have had, and I'm not kidding, we had armed guards at the door. And I'm not exaggerating. This is so civil. And because people know where I align in this, I get calls from my friends who feel differently to say, I don't want this to stand between us. And I hear all the thank yous. So I'm not going to give my personal opinion, but I'm just going to say we're really lucky to be here. And that I think everybody in this room kind of wants the same thing. That is so rare and so special. And I know that the board will keep working on it, and I don't want to lose sight. I don't think this will tear us apart, because this is incredibly unusual. We are not Caroline. We are not Caroline. We are. It's very amazing. What's Sladeville? No, this is, we are amazing and we're different. But the basic thing is everyone here wants the same thing. So we'll work it out.
I'm Bridget Brewer. Everyone's been so eloquent. I love what people are saying. And I just thought I had a few things to ask. And first of all, thank you, board, for everyone for all the work and all the really good intentions that I know are in all this work. There's a point I wanted to bring up, that housing costs across the US rose an average of 43% in 2022. Housing growth is stagnant for many reasons. A few of them are raised interest rates and the high costs of materials and labor. In my opinion, if zoning in Trumansburg is contributing to the problem by reduced opportunities for growth, then we would see that growth in neighboring counties where there are little zoning regulations. They have lower taxes and they can benefit from going to Trumansburg schools. I don't think that we're seeing that kind of buildup because of the other reasons. There are many opportunities to build more housing in Trumansburg that already exist in the comprehensive plan. In my neighborhood, many of my neighbors can add in my lot, I have about 3/4 acre. I can build 4 units in the current plan. And I don't see how adding an ADU with no parking requirement is really going to help. And then also what I've said before is that I just keep hearing how profitable ADUs are. And I think until we deal with the short-term rentals, that it's really not going to create a lot of availability for long-term housing until we deal with that. And it's a really tough issue. So I think there's creative solutions all over the country where people are dealing with this. And I just feel like people here are willing to put their heads together, maybe hire a consultant if we need to, and really figure out ways to do this. So thank you all.
Hi, I'm Barb Mahalki. I live on Bradley Street. I just want to say a couple of things, actually. I just want to mention the water issues, and adding additional dwellings would affect the water, the drainage, the runoff. And we're doing that very poorly in the village. We are not dealing with the water well. And I would like to see us deal with the water well before we start expanding and increasing density, and be thoughtful about how the water impacts the people who already live here. I do want to say one other thing that I just haven't heard anybody say, and that is that we are a place of affordable housing compared to Ithaca. People come to this area. A lot of people come, to work in Ithaca. Cornell brings them here, and we are affordable compared to Ithaca. Our taxes are affordable compared to Ithaca. And the other thing that I wanted to say is I went to Ireland a few years ago, and Ireland is beautiful. And I asked our tour guides, why do I not see anything ugly? Why are there no ugly houses in Ireland? And it's because they have zoning that is very strict and controlling about what you can build, what color your house can be, the structure it takes, all of those things. So I would hate to see a lot of ugly in what I think is a really beautiful village.
Any other public comment?
Hi, I'm Catherine Walker. I live here in the village. I'll just quickly add my voice. I thank you for all of your hard work and also commend my neighbors on all of their wonderful and eloquent arguments. Just two quick points that haven't been made. One is last week, 2 weeks ago at this meeting, one defense of the proposed plan was that a lot of the regulations built into the proposed plan actually already exist, and there really haven't been big problems. But I think we should not assume that the future will look like the past. And this is actually an opportunity for us to take another look at our zoning and make sure it's actually what we want it to be. My second point is that skeptics that I have spoken to of the current zoning plan do not argue about whether or not we need more affordable housing. It's really just it's how we approach it. And so I am among those who would like to expand affordable housing in our community. And I think we should really create a plan that reflects what we want and not doesn't have a lot of room outside of that for what we don't want that could be exploited. Thanks.
Tony Hansen. I spent a lot of time looking at this, a lot of time talking to Ben, and the changes that are proposed are all for the right reasons. Allowing more flexibility, more buildings to be added, smaller lots, all great. The only problem, it doesn't have the second part, which is some kind of guardrails to make sure that bad actors don't come in and take advantage of them just for profit. That's it.
Thank you for the great lead in. I'll just say thank you.
Name, please.
Oh, Angie Nicholson, Salo Drive. I'm returning here, lived here a long time ago. Love that the charm is still here in the village. Understand why people want to come here. And I think protecting is critical. I'm transitioning from Texas, which is the Wild West, and the only thing that matters is money and power. And I would really like to think that we care enough about our village to honor that they're out there. And we can lose all that we find precious if we're not careful with our zoning and making sure that we don't have some of the ricky-ticky stuff that I see in Ithaca in terms of an excuse for citing a house. Just saying. I really think that we want to honor that, continue the discussion, and make sure we're not leaving gaping holes for somebody to come in with guns ablazing and investing in our community and changing it in a way that we won't be happy about. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Okay, I just think that on the section that we're talking about ADUs or anything else being built on someone's property besides their house that they live in, is that there should be a clause in there that says that any building, whether it be an ADU or anything else, two-story apartment building, that it should have an environmental impact hearing statement, whatever,
to make sure that we don't have additional water issues. Because I think letting people right off the bat see that there is a concern, and that just because the ordinance says you can do that doesn't mean that it actually can happen, because there are guidelines and situations, just like anything else you do in your life, that concerns whether or not you want to do something or not. And I think that really needs to be in there, because there are so many water issues across this whole village. And you're going to start, putting in long driveways that are asphalt or gravel or whatever it is, you're going to have issues. And this village does not need that. We already have enough of those. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anyone online? Going once? All right, well, thank you, everybody. We will move on to item number 5 on the agenda, which is reports from representatives. I see Ann Corman is with us from the county, so whenever you're ready, Ann.
Thanks, Mayor. I appreciate it. A couple of things, first regarding our budget. We had our first meeting. Our budget process is about 6 to 8 months long. So we're often working on our budget for the county. And based on some issues such as not being reimbursed as much as we have been from the state and some other reasons, our preliminary estimate for our budget going into our next couple of meetings, we're looking at a 5.53% increase. And that would be about $99 on the average price of our average value of a house right now, which is up in the county to $249,000 is the average price. And so one of the things, good news is that from the state passing its budget, we could see our overall budget reduced $1 million. So that figure will hopefully be brought down quite a bit. So we'll keep you updated on that. And as you probably know, the mall has closed, or at the Cayuga Health has closed the COVID testing site at the mall. And so people can still get tests at their doctors or the hospital or convenient care type places. And we're doing an opioid trying to think of the name of it, but we have an opioid settlement survey, I think it's called. And the county's received $700,000, and the survey is open to everybody in the county to see if they have any ideas on how we could spend that money wisely and to the best benefit of the community. I will send an email to the municipalities again, asking you to share that, because I just checked, it's a little hard to find on our website. I'll also put that on my Facebook page. So we'd like everybody to give us some ideas on how to spend that. That survey is open till the 29th of this month. We just completed, we had a firm complete a compensation study for all of our employees, and that will help us when we renegotiate contracts with our unions. So that'll be helpful. And let's see what else here. Congratulations to the village on receiving $5,000 from our Parks Grant Fund for the park at the water tower. And the county also. Did I preempt your announcement of that? Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
Okay. As you so the county also awarded $15,000 to the town of Ulysses, which is administering the summer grant youth program. And so that 15,000 is for scholarships to help with that program. And the county also had 3 informations, well, with the state and DEC, we had 3 information sessions regarding the preliminary floodplain maps. And the last thing I have to report is that we had a report on the broadband study that we've been doing, or the survey. And so now we're going to look at the underserved area households, actually, not just areas, but we've narrowed it down to households. And we're going to be looking at our next legislature meeting about passing a resolution to get an RFP to see if we can get people or companies to give us estimates on what it might cost to serve those areas. We're also going to be looking at not just serving the current households, but to serve every road if possible, because even if someone wants to, especially out in rural areas, if somebody wants to build a house on there later, they'll run into, they won't have any internet unless we preemptively put it in there. So we're gonna be working on that. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any board questions for Ann?
Thanks for the 5K.
Yes.
You're welcome. And I'm glad to see, if I could just speak to everybody, I'm glad to see so many people come to your meeting. We always appreciate when they come to our legislature meetings and give us feedback. So thank you. I know it's not easy speaking up.
Let's see here. All right, so no other representatives at the moment to offer a report. So item number 6 is reports from this board. I don't have anything other than just to mention, and I was looking for the dollar amount, but yes, thank you to the county for the $5,000 for the water tower. What are we calling that?
Yet to be named water tower park.
Recreation area TV.
But I was looking for the dollar amount. We'll be just discussing this in new business as it's not as cut and dried as it's about to sound, but the village did receive or was awarded, I think it's $188,000 grant for 4 level 2 and 2 DC fast charging units for zero emission vehicles in the village to be placed at the farmers market and village offices. The catch is that covers about half of the cost. But happy that we were awarded that particular grant. I think there's another grant in play. This was supposed to be part of Ben Carver's report. So
Yeah, there's definitely a prep one that's like prep the work or something. There's another one in play.
there were 2 grants and together they were going to cover the cost.
Right.
About 188,000. That's called the Zero Emission Vehicle Grant Award.
It was like a site prep grant or something like that, but I don't remember the details.
So TBD on how much gets done and exactly when, but 4 level 2 chargers and 2 DC fast charging units. So the level 2s are your multiple hour recharges and your DC fast chargers are I think those ones we spec'd out at about a half hour. The thought was originally when we applied for this that it would be nice to put them somewhere in the area of Main Street, but state DOT has basically said, no, thank you. So we have to find other locations. Village office right here at the end of this parking lot, we have access to enough power. And at the farmer's market, we have access to enough power. Well, we need access to more money. So, but that's something we will discuss further in new business. Fire and Schumansburg Area Chamber of Commerce, Marcia.
Fire, Matt and I met, Matt's here. I uploaded in the Dropbox the contract for the new fire truck, which we approved through the referendum the last time.
Where is it?
Last meeting. Should be in there. Nobody sees it?
What are you looking for?
It's in my Dropbox,
What are you looking for?
the contract for the fire truck.
In today's meeting?
Oh. Pardon me, I'm not technologically advanced.
Got it. I see.
Got it? Did you get it?
Yeah, it's not in today. It's in just the board folder.
Okay. So that was $879,780.
What was the name of the file? The KMS rescue pumper proposal?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, KME.
You
Yeah.
see it?
Yeah, I see that. Did you move it or I can move it in?
Can you
I
move
have
it?
not moved it. I
Better way you
don't know
move
that I can
I'll move it in.
from the iPad.
Okay,
Missing it.
because I don't know how to move.
I've
anything.
moved it into.
I'm
our
lucky I
folder
got it
for
in
this
there.
meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And yes, I did hear someone in the audience mention, it is $900,000 for a fire truck. Hence our constant conversation about expenses. The next one's gonna be about $1.3 million. Coming up here in a few years, so. Big ticket items.
And 860 calendar days for receipt.
Yes, nearly 3 years to build. So that permissive referendum resolution was what date?
The publication,
No, when did we pass the?
you passed that on the 10th.
10.
That was the second meeting.
I thought it was the second meeting, but I just reviewed the minutes and it was in the 10th.
Okay.
I'll verify that, but it's, yeah.
Jules, I'm gonna refrain from asking how much fire trucks were when you first volunteered. So are you looking, Marcia, for approval to sign the contract?
Yes.
So then, as the time has passed from the issuance of the permissive referendum last month, I would entertain a motion to authorize me to sign this contract with Gorman for the purchase and build out of this is heavy rescue, yeah? Yes. Of the heavy rescue fire truck. So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other questions or comments?
And just for people listening, this is a 3-year build out, so it's gonna take 3 years and we've been putting money aside for this truck all along, so it's not gonna be a big bang all at once. It's money that's been put aside. We have money, we're still putting money aside. And by the time the truck is delivered, we'll have the money to pay for it.
Oh, it's gonna be a big bang all at once.
Oh, yeah, it is a big bang all at once, but we're putting money aside for it.
And one thing we do certainly do, I think, relatively well is reserve account budgeting for big expenditures. Any other questions or comments about this contract? Hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Just will you print that for me for tomorrow?
Yeah.
And I believe they have moved forward with doing the electrical work.
Yeah.
Have they met? Okay. So they're upgrading the electrical work at the fire department. We had some issues with things, the capability of certain tools and things being able to maintain their power, so we're upgrading some of that. So everybody
And
knows.
is that converting to LED lights at the same time or are those separate projects? I might be confusing them.
They're doing the lights.
They're doing the
Okay.
lights right now.
Okay, great.
Just wanted to mention they started it. Other than that, I don't have anything else.
Okay. Trustee Carver is not here, so DPW, water, sewer, CPZR, farmers market, what? Quid?
And Quio, yeah, we dropped Quio.
Add
It's-
Quio.
And then more things. I think maybe the first thing to start with is this quote from EDR. So that is in the Dropbox. I did just I think I just updated the name to be like, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's starts with a date 230508, parcel analysis and zoning scenario evaluation scope. So this started with a conversation with EDR. So EDR is the design firm that we've contracted with for the comprehensive plan and now the zoning work.
Where is that been?
7A3. Is it not uploaded?
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Got it.
You got
The
it.
3 is 3 lowercase.
3II, yeah, 7A II. So this started out of a conversation with EDR that we are a little bit under budget for the current work for zoning. And we were discussing if there was some interesting uses for that funding. And that brought us to this idea of getting a better understanding of the lot dimensions throughout the village so we can do better analysis of how the zoning proposal actually has an impact or doesn't, throughout the village. The key thing right now is that we don't have comprehensive frontage numbers. We have assessment data that has lot sizes and that we can do a lot of analysis on. We have frontage data, but it's, I think they were estimating about 50% of the village. So that's been enough for kind of rough gross estimations and playing with data. And we've used some of that in the zoning proposal, and I'll talk through more about that later. But we don't have every single lot, exactly how much frontage it is, exactly how much frontage the house is, exactly how much frontage there is on this side of the house, that side of the house. And you really need to get that granularity down to start talking about when we talk about 40 feet of frontage, 45 feet, 50 feet, 10-foot setbacks, 15-foot setbacks. What does that actually impact? What lots are actually available to be subdivided or not? And so this is a proposal to basically have someone by hand go through every lot in the village and actually draw that and build that data set up. So at the end of the day, we'll have a spreadsheet that says lot 1 has this much frontage and this much house frontage and this much left frontage and this much right frontage, whatever it is. And then that will allow us to then pour through that data and get a better sense of exactly where could we subdivide, where can we not subdivide. And then so that's the bulk of this proposal. That's 4,500 out of it. And the last 500 is then to take that, once we've kind of developed a couple scenarios, let's look at current zoning, let's look at the proposal. Maybe there's a couple places in between, or maybe we start realizing that none of this is going to make any change and we should look at something more aggressive. Like we'll find out when we get into the data, then we can get some maps of exactly what that will look like. And that'll help, I think, with a lot of the question of visualization. How do we look at, what does it look like? Is it 5% and they're all over here? Is it 85% and it's all through the village? Like, what are we talking about? So that's the proposal here. This is something I had considered and would have loved earlier in the process, but it's not cheap. I mean, this is about the same amount that we're spending for the entire zoning project. And so I think we had held back on kind of going down this road, knowing how expensive it was going to be. But I think we're hearing a lot of desire for this now. And I think it would be a valid use of our money to kind of explore this data gathering. So
I totally agree. I think it would be a very good idea for people to just get an idea of exactly what that looks like. I know it would help me, and I know that that's been the concerns of a lot of people, and I think that would be a great way to set that out.
Yeah. And I love
And look at it again.
I
Yeah.
love more spreadsheets. So,
I can't even upload into Dropbox, so I'm just.
Well, I would actually, this is a data set that I think we can continue to have for a long time. It's something, this is kind of longer term, but I'd love to see if we can give this back to county planning. They have GIS databases. We can be able to have them map things going forward. So I think this isn't even just a for right now sort of thing. This is something we can continue to use and evaluate and evolve with over time.
Yeah, I think that'd be wonderful.
So
how much is it?
It's 5,000 total. And I don't have a line for this to come out of. And so that could be a question for us. Probably we should sort
No,
that
we would
out.
take it out of, we have the EDR line.
Yeah.
Engineering contractual, zoning contractual,
I thought we had a special separate line for EDR.
engineering,
Not
zoning engineering.
And MRB's
Up
engineering.
planning or something, maybe.
But anyway, you can come out of that line and then we
Okay.
can just budget mod it at the end of the year.
Okay.
Okay.
So if you're okay, Jess, with it being that line.
Yeah.
So then I would move that we allow Rorden to sign this scope of work document, or I guess proposal letter from EDR for professional services to create data around the zoning for $5,000.
We have a motion and do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any other questions, comments, conversation? Hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
All right. So that done, let's jump in all the highlights. On the CPZR front, we do have what I think is a final initial draft. I don't even know what to name these things anymore. A final initial draft of short-term rental law. The committee is going to discuss that one last time next Monday. And if all seems well, which I think it does, and it's been through legal review through Guy, we'll be ready to put that out to the public for public comment. We do anticipate, it might not be right away on Monday. I think we would like to write up a little bit of like another FAQ. How did we come to this? What are the things pushing us in this direction? So that there's some context around it, and then we'll push that all out for public comment and just schedule a public information meeting, maybe in our June meeting time. I'm not quite sure. So we'll see where that goes, but short-term rental law coming soon to a website near you. Commercial zoning. So that's kind of the bulk of where our focus is now, is we're at the point of starting to compare our current zoning and with the comp plan guidance around what we would like to see in commercial zoning. And we've pulled some model ordinances from the American Planning Association for mixed use village districts, bringing that all together and starting that conversation. So we'll start moving through that. And maybe depending on where the residential conversation goes, if the committee needs to be of assistance, then we're happy to be of assistance there. On farmers market side, it's open. First one was last Wednesday. I wasn't able to go myself, but it sounded lovely. It's usually always a bit of a slower start in the beginning, but I would encourage people to go out, enjoy the market. It's a wonderful place to be. It's a wonderful reason to live in the village. Let's see, DPW water sewer. So Janice mentioned this, the Union Street sidewalk is up and working. It looks beautiful. So huge thanks to DPW for that. We got a very lovely handwritten letter today thanking us for that. And it just made my day. You don't get handwritten letters as much anymore, especially in that handwriting, that the script on it was just, it's amazing. So I'm going to frame that maybe.
Cursive is a line.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Something to behold. The sewer law, just an update on that. We do have our public hearing for the sewer law and for seeker review for that law at our next meeting. And we do have a draft study of sewer rates. I haven't had time to sit down with them. Something else has been taking some of my time. But I'll get through and digest that. And we will have an article in the summer newsletter around a little more detail around the water rates and the sewer rates when we get there. And we'll eventually have to pass some changes there, but still working through that. I think the last thing is Quio then. So I did join the first Quio meeting. That's the Cuba Watershed. Yes, intermunicipal organization. A lot of words. They actually had a very fascinating presentation from some Cornell students that did a bunch of analysis of all the different types of regulations around water and water drainage and so forth issues in the whole like Finger Lakes region. Is fascinating. But anyhow, still just kind of getting my bearings there, but keeping an ear out for anything that's important to us. There was one note of someone who does some consulting work around stormwater management stuff, and we work with the MRB on a lot of that, but we've got another name if we ever wanted to now. So that's it.
Ben, are you on their emails? Are you getting their agendas and whatnot in advance of meetings?
Believe so.
Okay, cool.
I haven't gotten anything now, but I know their meeting's at the end of the month. But I was getting some emails from Liz throughout, so I'm hopefully.
Then you are,
I'm
great,
looped in.
okay.
Yeah. And they do a good job of keeping up everything on their website too, so.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Police and ETC, Keith.
I believe I'll start with the the monthly report of our calls. So we had 120 calls for service during the month of April, and we also assisted with 2 calls for service outside the village, assisting the Tompkins County Sheriff's Department. For our criminal investigations within the village, we had 2 frauds, 1 trespass, 3 domestic investigations. Thought that was a clap for trespass. Glad that's not the case. We don't want to encourage trespassing, especially with, no, I won't, never mind. 3 domestic investigations, 2 harassments, and 2 criminal mischief investigations, and 3 motor vehicle crash investigations. And that's the extent of our criminal investigations. No major incidents or crimes to report this month, which is usually the case. So that's good. I think we will address the chief's Tahoe to EMS later in the agenda. That's on new business, so I won't cover that. We're looking to put the Ford Explorer up for auction because it's served its time. It's ready to go. Probably looking to replace it with a Chevy Tahoe. Chief has done some extensive research on electric police vehicles. Certainly the charge, there you go, just for you, Jules. Certainly the addition of the potential charging stations would help that. I think the major obstacle is deciding whether or not the village and the taxpayers have an appetite for $100,000 police car. So probably not going to go that route. That's an expensive vehicle, as much as, you know, we want to be earth conscious. That's a lot of money for the department and for the village budget. So looking like a Chevy Tahoe. Chief has requested, he'd be very interested in new carpet within the department side of Village Hall. I believe the office side is getting replaced or has been replaced.
Assessment.
It's an assessment. I think he would also like to be assessed. Said his carpet is not in good condition. It's pretty old. So if we're doing a Village Hall look, he'd like to be included. We had previously, I believe we had previously approved work for changing the layout of the counter when you enter the police station. And that's something he wants to get an updated quote on because he'd like to revisit that soon as well. We're doing a good job with our part-time roster right now. We're at a roster size that we're as comfortable with as we have been in a long time. So while we still have been looking for a 3rd full-time officer, there's less urgency right now because we are pretty well staffed with the part-time role. Chief also is looking to buy new radar speed signs, 2 of them. He's going to pursue quotes for them. We currently have 1 and it's not in good condition, not totally reliable. And we certainly have had many members of the community talk about speeding on their roads. And so we want to continue to be able to put those signs out, monitor speeds, and be able to investigate certain roads that we've heard a lot of complaints about. And right now we've had one unreliable speed sign. So he's going to provide a quote and hopefully we have that by the next meeting so we can see what that looks like. I would also say that our LEAPS committee is looking to meet next month. This is our Law Enforcement and Public Safety Committee, and it is open to village residents if you are interested in joining. It's been a few months since we've met, so we're going to try to get back on the calendar. But you can follow up with us. If you're not on the committee and you'd like to take part, since we have an audience here, it's not strictly a conversation about law enforcement in the village. It's about all things that reflect safety and everyone feeling comfortable within the village. Could be crosswalks, could be, all different things that help everyone feel a little bit more welcome and safe in the village. And lastly, thank you, Janice, for talking about the Wig and South Street sidewalk. We've heard a lot of good feedback on that. So thanks for Joe creating that partnership with the school district to help get that done. Because we've had a lot of good feedback about, a lot of people have said not until there was a crossing guard there have they really realized how needed it was. So glad we had people in the community step up to fill now 3 streets. And so very thankful for that. That's it.
Can you get with Dusty to have Clint look at the police department side? Yeah, Clint is doing the carpet pricing. And also he probably wasn't here when they talked about redesigning the front counter. If he wasn't, but if he wasn't here, then he would be the guy to do it.
Clint on both the counter and the carpets. Got it.
I think the conversation about the counter might predate Clint.
Yeah, maybe.
But
I'll talk to Dustin.
You could do that and then after.
ETC, so that's the Event and Tourism Committee. We met on Friday. And one thing that we're moving ahead with is getting those market banners up. I think DPW that's on.
Yeah, that's on Dusty's list. I don't know if it's happened yet. I'm checking with, yeah.
So we have banners that can go on the light poles for the farmer's market, and it's gonna, basically, we're gonna run them from the farmer's market up to word of mouth catering. So we can kind of celebrate the market, but also leave some real estate for other things as needed. Talked a lot about the before mentioned park. We didn't know yet that we had approved, got the grant. So that's great. So we have $5,000 for the park. For those who don't know, there's discussion in an initial plan to create that discussion for developing more of a park space at the water tower. Right now, that plan includes kind of a walking trail with a pollinator garden, a pavilion. So there's a lot of I've been approached at Gimme by some folks who said, wait a minute, what's all this talk about a park? No one's asked my opinion. So we are very much going towards that kind of public feedback phase. Kind of we have a green space committee. And on that committee are some architects who have provided the kind of the initial plan, but that plan will be discussed and will be put out for public feedback. And there will be ample opportunity to discuss ideas for what that space could contain and what would make it usable. We've heard ideas like community garden, some recreational space for like volleyball court, things like that. So if you have ideas for that green space, you can certainly email me anytime or the general village email. So again, we're just kind of getting going with that because I know some people have started to talk about it's not the current sketch is far from a determined plan. So if you've been a little concerned that there hasn't been more opportunity to discuss it, that opportunity will certainly come, and we're not moving ahead with anything. Kind of getting that $5,000 was a pretty big step to know that we can really do anything. And then certainly will probably be more money needed to be go into that as well. That was a big first step. So did I miss anything, Jessica? I didn't think so. It's good. Okay. I yield.
Okay. Treasurer's office.
So we are approaching the end of our fiscal year. And that brings with it my going to the AUD school so I can learn what the new AUD looks like. The end of the year detailed report that we have to do. From the treasurer's side, what else? So, and getting caught up, I know that the department heads would be eager to see where their budget real to projected lands. So that's hot on the list through January. And I think we've streamlined a lot of processes in collaboration with codes officer and Jen, the deputy clerk, and Dusty, to sort of how our receivables get generated and recorded. So I expect that things will move a little bit more swiftly. We're sort of at that slow rise up to efficiency, hanging on to the end side of that. And then in terms of specific treasurer questions, does anyone have anything from that end that they're concerned about? And then from the sort of the clerk aspect, we are working through some points from that sewer analysis, checking into that. So we got a little bit down the way, and that's on our list to look at this week and reach out to you to move that forward with some feedback from what we noticed. And let's see, the tax roll went to the county, and so the preliminary tax roll is out there. You can see that if anyone wants to see what they've been assessed at, that you can go to the county website and look under the town of Ulysses, and then the village is there. And this week I will put up the village tentative roll on our website. There's a contest period or dispute period, I think it's called, before it becomes final. And all of those details are definitely on the county website. We are hoping to hear back, I think, this week from the Advanced 2000 IT assessment. Again, efficiency, my t-shirt says I love efficiency. So really looking forward to how that might improve our systems, being a pretty high functioning, but 2-person office. So stay tuned for that. And what am I seeing else here? I think that's it. Yeah, clerk. And I forget, Jen's got a lot to say. Oh, I just wanted to compliment Jen on increased visibility of the newsletter, everyone who signed up last week, and that people are using the website public comment email address as well as the clerk address. We've garnered a lot of feedback, which I think is a testimony to reaching people where they are and giving them a space to feedback and collecting all of the comments in an appropriate file that can be foiled. Okay. So I just have a few more things to add.
I just have a few small things to add. Water sewer bills went out last week. So you can pay in person. We love to see you in the office, but you can also pay online. And you can mail them to us, whatever you prefer. And one other thing, we do have a community yard sale on May 20th. So if you have things in your house that you have been wanting to get rid of, please sign up. You can give me a call at the village office, or you can fill out a form online and we'll get you registered. I'm going to be printing up maps with all the locations.
Okay, any questions for Jessica or Jennifer? One thing I will add about the assessments, if anyone does go and look at your assessments, your June 1 village tax bills will be based off of your 2022 final assessments. Your tentative 2023 assessments don't take effect until July. Our taxes are levied in June. So whatever they went up, because everyone's went up, whatever they went up to for this year will apply to next year's village taxes, not this year's. Okay. So old business. We have a board discussion time or time set aside. We're only 9 minutes behind. How about that? About 45 minutes-ish. Thanks, Matt. Set aside for board discussion on the zoning law in general, the proposed zoning law, and or to discuss feedback from our April 24th public hearing. I thought we would just go around the table and give everyone an opportunity to make some comments, and I'll simply start by reiterating what I've said previously, which is, as you heard, fire trucks are expensive. Services are expensive. You know, this affordable housing, be careful how I say this, affordable housing as it is understood in the terminology, meaning the subsidized version of it. That's certainly something the county wants us to focus on. That's something that there is a willingness within the community to pay attention to. as I mentioned at the end of the public hearing, this process began as part of the carryover and fallout from the 46 South Street evaluation. So not only was it time in 2018 to begin looking at reviewing our comprehensive plan, which New York State says we're supposed to review every 10 years, how New York State expects us, any small municipality, to review a comprehensive plan and then redo zoning every decade is absolutely beyond me. That's a soapbox for another day. But the timing was good in 2018 to establish a committee to review the comprehensive plan and then see where zoning could be adjusted, given that there were triple the complaints about our current zoning at that time than we've heard about the draft zoning. Bless you. My focus for the committee and the task that I tasked them with was just do that, review the comprehensive plan, do the surveys, and then see where that leads. From kind of a holistic view, my only comments, because I'm still in feedback absorption mode, not having been a member of the committee. And I think Ben will speak to the fact that there's a little bit of a disconnect, given that I think the CPZR, I know the members of the CPZR did a great job in all of their work over these last few years. And they actually, from the emails that have gone back and forth, in which I did not read all of them, actually fleshed out everything that's been discussed and came to their conclusions based on, bless you, based on a desire to balance those three items I mentioned at the end of the public hearing that are in conflict within the comprehensive plan. And I had a good conversation with someone whose opinion I respect that said, yes, those three things are in conflict, but we can find a way to balance them. Well, I appreciate the optimism. The reality is that one or more of the three things are going to have to potentially flex, because the idea that we can maintain the character of the village in some type, if maintaining the character of the village implies some type of prevention of possible change, then that is in conflict with maintaining the ability of people to live here from a cost perspective. And it is in conflict with the ability of the village to continue to provide services. So as I say, I'm still in feedback absorption mode, but it's actually fitting that we're talking about tax bills going out in 3 weeks, assessments going up every year, fire trucks approaching $1 million. Because my perspective is that in order to balance the three, we need a larger tax base. We need a larger tax base. And I don't want to see what happens in Ithaca. I don't want to see 5- and 6-story buildings. I don't want to see stuff that might be worth a lot, but is brand new to the village. And a lot of what we're talking about, and I appreciate the feedback from everyone. I appreciate the feedback from everyone at the public hearing. And again, tonight, I'm glad, to Marlene's point, I'm glad that what we're talking about is a house here, an ADU there, a 4-unit here, a 3-unit there, and we're not talking about the commercial section of Lansing. No offense to Lansing. Because I don't, that is something completely foreign and brand new to the village. I don't think is certainly not what the community has indicated they want. However, we are on track if nothing is done. And again, I said this at the public hearing, if the will of the community is to do nothing, then that's where we will go. But we are on track inexorably, without question. It's purely a math function. We are on track for the median price of a single family residence in the village of Trumansburg to exceed $500,000 by 2030. That will happen. And that's fantastic if you pay $50,000 for your house 40 years ago, because guess what? If you ever decide to sell and move or sell and downsize, you get to pocket all of that money tax-free, right? So the value within the single family residence, within your home, is one of the last things that the Internal Revenue Code still sort of protects, right? So I get it. I get that value as a function of an individual's net worth is a significant portion of it. However, if we want to be able to allow for young families to move into the village so their kids can walk to school, we will be pricing out a lot of people if there isn't the ability to build. And that's okay if that's what the community wants, but that I'm just stating that the reality is we're headed in that direction. We're also headed in the direction, we're actually already there. I know of many, and by many, I mean probably 24 village residents who are retired, who really wish they could downsize and sell, but they have nowhere to go if they want to stay in the village. And you know, at $500,000, their village taxes are going to be $15,000, $16,000 a year. They don't have $1,500 a month extra to pay those taxes. So again, we can make the conscious decision, and Skinny Atlas has been mentioned more than once, sometimes favorably, sometimes not. Beautiful community, super expensive. And if that's what Trumansburg wants to become, then we're on our way. Our location in the Finger Lakes Wine Trail makes us a coveted area to live and vacation and visit. I think that's a benefit for Trumansburg. There are a lot of small upstate New York municipalities that don't have anything really around them and don't have anything going for it. So we are blessed based on where we're located in the Finger Lakes. And so it's very possible we can become the Skinny Atlas of the Finger Lakes Wine Trail. And if that's what folks want, then we have to go into that with eyes wide open and understand that that means teachers will never be able to buy a house in the village again. Police officers and firefighters will never be able to buy a house in the village again. 80-year-old senior citizens will not be able to afford their house in the village in 10 years. And again, if that's the will of the village, then that's where we will end up. If we want to try to moderate that, remember the conversation about healthcare, bend the cost curve. If we want to bend the cost curve, or in this case, bend the expensiveness curve, then we will need to do something. What that looks like is what all this discussion is about. But those are the only two roads we essentially have to choose to go down. And so with that, I will go clockwise and end with Ben, and let Marcia give any comments you might have.
I would just like to reiterate what Gordon said. I mean, I've lived here for 61 years. The Trumansburg Golf Course was my great grandfather's farm. So Pennsylvania Avenue was a dirt road when I was a little girl, and I used to ride my bike, and there was nothing there but a couple of houses. And I remember people saying when they put in the Larchmont development, oh, there goes the neighborhood. But I also remember plugging my nose to walk across the bridge downtown when I went to get a cherry Coke from Freddie's Laundromat because raw sewage was coming down the creek. And if those people from Larchmont hadn't developed, if Pennsylvania Avenue hadn't developed, if people hadn't moved in here, we wouldn't have clean water. We wouldn't have been able to upgrade our sewer plant. And I also have an 81-year-old mother that was recently widowed, and she's living in a house, like Gordon said. Yeah, your assessment goes up, but if your income goes down $2,000, where are you supposed to pay your taxes out of? My parents used to own a cleaning business in Trumansburg, and my mother used to do all of the school uniforms. She used to do the towels for the local barber. We had 6 people that lived in our house. And she did all of our laundry. She had teenagers taking showers, and her water and sewer bill now is double what it was when she did all of that. So you can understand her panic, and actually we did get a few emails, and they are anonymous. And there are some people that say, I don't care. People can live where they can afford to live. And if they can't live in the village, so be it. I can afford to live in the village. I was very fortunate to buy my grandparents' house. I've lived on the same street that I grew up on. I live on the same street where Jules went home. We've been neighbors for years and years since I was a little girl. And my dad, who recently passed away, lived on the same street for 85 years. He never moved off it. Once they sold the farm to the golf course, he just moved across the street. And when I was a little girl, I could play in that road with my friend Annie. with our dolls and we'd sit in the middle of the road and we'd play there, and clearly we would not play in the middle of Halsey Street now. So things do change. And yeah, there might be more traffic and there might be more businesses and more hustle and more bustle. But, you know, I owned a flower shop also in Trumansburg for 12 years. And I can honestly tell you, I had some wonderful, faithful local customers, but that did not pay my bills. The only thing that paid my bills was the wine trail weddings that I did. And I did about 50 of them a year. That was massive. And it's the only thing that kept me in business, not the local business. So we really need tourism too. And we really need to take that into consideration. I mean, it's a wonderful community. And like Warden said, there's a lot of checks and balances and a lot of thoughtfulness that needs to go into it. But we just can't shut it down and neglect the fact that, you know, there's someday I am fearful that I might be priced out of my home, because I was just lucky enough to get that property because it belonged to family and I could pay a low price for it. But someday it's going to be assessed at a lot of money, probably as my husband and I approach retirement. And I do worry about getting priced out of it. And there's a lot of people that were originally in small towns. And I'm sure there were people that lived in Skinny Atlas originally 100 years ago, that their property wasn't worth a lot of money. And I mean, it's great if you could sell your house for 4 or 5 times the amount of money that you bought it for, but if you have nowhere to go and you need to stay, that's very scary. So I think, you know, a lot of consideration, and I think everybody's been so wonderful about, someone just said it, so respectful and wonderful about their concerns and saying what they vision it to be. And I agree that we all have the same goal, and it would be nice to just be thoughtful of, you know, those different segments of people, not just necessarily, like Word said. I think sometimes we get caught up in the affordable housing thing, and my question has always been, what's affordable? But other than subsidized housing, how do we keep our wonderful residents here that have a real connection in history, and how do we welcome you know, the new people that are going to contribute to that in the future? So that's just my thoughts. And I think it's great we're taking this opportunity to really look at it and listen to everybody's feedback. So thank you, everybody.
Chief?
Thank you. First, I just want to applaud the gentleman to my left, Ben Darfler. I know it's been said that he and his committee have done a remarkable job. Kathy's here, representing the committee as well. I think it's been said. I just think we as colleagues of Ben's need to just say it again, how much work has gone into this, how long they've started. We all, Rorden, Ben, and I all started in our positions on the exact same day. And this was on that agenda, the creation of the CPZR, and that was April 2018. So when we say there's been a lot of work done, there has been a lot of work done. And not only has the committee done a lot of work, and Ben's done a lot of research and homework, because I live next to Ben, and so I talk to Ben a lot. And I think Anthony's got a chance to know Ben, so he knows Ben's brain a little bit. Ben doesn't do anything half speed. And so all the extra time he's put into this outside of the committee, he has a day job. He has 2 young children. And he consistently replies to email. He consistently wades into the troublesome waters of social media to answer questions, and takes a lot of heat. He takes a lot of heat, this guy. And I'm not just saying this because his mom is here. She's usually here anyway. But I just want to acknowledge Ben and thank him, because he, I hear a lot of comments from people around town about, like, how does Ben Darfler like do it? How does he like maintain his cool and have this many conversations with this many people? And it's a testament to who he is, his devotion to his work in the village. And I just think I I'm in awe of him most of the time. And I know many of you have had a chance to get to know Ben, whether you agree with him on this, on the proposal or not, have come to respect it as well. So I'm not suggesting that nobody isn't recognizing that, but I just felt inclined to say it too. Yes. That was the goal.
I agree too.
So I'd also say, likewise, the feedback we've received is impressive. Please never think, I know there's a sentiment out there that sometimes the board or a specific committee isn't listening. Trust me, we're listening. And I also respect that I know enough about local town governments where it's, as has been said, it can be very nasty. I know somebody that moved up from Florida that lives in the village now that used to cover local politics in Florida. And he said how amazed he's been since he's moved here about how civil our local government is. So especially how the board treats each other. He said that's new to him, board members being respectful to each other. So we are appreciative of the feedback and the thoughtfulness. And some of you have been talking to us for a week. Some of you have been talking to us for 3 or 4 years on this topic. So please never think that that's not respected or appreciated. I have notes from, I've added people that have spoken today that didn't speak before, but 42 people. Anthony, Janice, Dolores, Barb, Jerry, Rose, Jen, Bridget, Tom Grislow, Nancy Tubbs, Kate Frazier, Ryan, don't have his last name, sorry, he used to live in Brooklyn, Jim Wilson, Nancy Fear, Ariana, Eric, I could go on, but please know that each bits of these feedback are highly considered. And I don't think anyone's completely made up our mind on any of this or are not in favor of potential revisions at the same time. For me, looking at this, I've seen a number of themes come out of this. One, not listening, not incorporating feedback, hasty policy, too much too soon, parking requirements, the fear of kind of outside corporations taking over local property, the amount of density, exasperation of current water issues. Public should vote, an unopposed board shouldn't get to decide it. Didn't receive enough professional oversight would lead to change of village character. Lack of connection to the comp plan and not enough communication to get public feedback. I think I'd like to just address a few of those. One being, again, I mentioned the not listening to incorporate feedback. I think this board takes that extremely seriously. So never want to give the idea that that's the case. We're listening, whether your comments are in our email box or in person on social media, we see them. Trust me, we see them. In terms of not enough communication, I think, Roden, you addressed this maybe at the last meeting or a couple meetings ago. This board doesn't always get it right. We don't have 1,000% batting average here. One thing I think we've done really well is the amount of communication outlets that we have, that we provide. I know there was some feedback from some folks that say, well, we're not on social media. There's a lot of opportunity outside of social media. So I hope we've made that clear that there are a lot of different communication vehicles for everyone. As I've thought about this issue personally, I've really thought about, it's definitely concerning to many people in the village. Personally, I have not felt that. And I've been trying to figure out, as someone who, I have a fairly valuable property now, more valuable than I'd like it to be based on my recent assessment and tax burden. I have close neighbors. I have terrible water issues in my backyard, as my friends on Wig Street knows. Basically, the whole village dumps into my backyard and creates a lake anytime we get a big rainstorm. I feel like I'm really invested in the community as an elected official, a volunteer, and a year-round youth sports coach. Certainly have a huge investment in the safety and quality of our neighborhood as I'm raising 3 young children here. And I think for me, it's something that's been touched upon here. I'm only 7 years in this village now, far cry from Marcia's time here, and many of you for that matter. And I think the realization for me is, if I had waited a couple years longer, I probably wouldn't be here.
Right.
I would not be in my house. It was a stretch to get in here to begin with. I thought the monthly payment was going to be far too high, but my wife said it's next to the school campus, so we have to move here. All she wanted to do her whole life was walk kids to school, and we're paying for the privilege. So I think that hits home to me. The idea that the difficulty of what it takes for someone to move here or age in place is a tremendous challenge now. And at the same time, I totally respect everyone's, dedication to their own property and the village as a whole and what people could do next door to them. But I guess I'm also not convinced that this proposal as currently written, I don't think it's going to be feasted upon by developers. I don't think it's going to be abused, and maybe that's finding better nature in people and what they'll do. And I think that for a couple of reasons. One, I think the two reasons I think about that is, one, I don't think there's a tremendous amount of people in the village who have the resources to build on their property, considering what it costs to build. And I also don't think it's profitable enough for corporations to build on some of these units. And with that, I would also say, I'm also feel that this policy does not become cemented in stone for the next 100 years. If things start to happen that we don't like in the village, policies can change. A new board can come in and move it. So the other side of this is it rushed? Is it hasty? I think this committee has spent years on this. I think they're still open to the idea of potential revisions. I think it's very important in a time where civic engagement is probably at an all-time low to be very careful of how we handle and respect the time of our volunteers. And by that, I mean, if someone's going to take 2 to 3 years and more to work on a policy, now that doesn't mean they're going to hit a home run with it. But I think we just have to be very careful to say something was rushed or not thought through, because that's really gonna, I think, make it hard to, these are good volunteers. The idea that there's not enough professional expertise within this committee, I think there is some good professional expertise on the committee. 2, they have consulted with other agencies. And 3, in terms of professional review, the feedback from Tompkins County, which has a full-time planning department, they only had really one strike against us. And that was, it was too conservative, that it didn't go far enough, that it didn't open the door to address more of our needs as a village and a county. So I think I only bring that up not to say that the county is right, because we don't always agree with the county. I'm not saying the county is right, but I'm saying that to say that I think the committee was very much thinking about being measured in their approach compared to what some other agencies and people that what I would say are full-time professionals on this do. or have recommended to this committee. I think I'll wrap it there, but I'll just say, I totally agree that I don't think there's any such thing as a perfect policy. I think government has very few levers it can pull to make direct change to a community. And I think this is one that we have to be, again, Roden's right. We have a lot of feedback to continue to process here, but I think we have to maintain a very open mind that this is a necessary lever that we need to pull. And we could continue to talk about it. We could continue to, we could table this and spend another 2 or 3 years on it. I'm not convinced it will ever look good in terms of a unanimous agreement. That's just the way these policies work. So I'm much more in favor of taking this feedback, seeing if there's revisions needed, but by and large, I would support it. And lastly, I would say to the idea that this board I think it's important to clear something up. The idea that this board could put this out to a vote. We can't. All right. That's just not really plausible under state law. So that's one thing. To the idea that this board gets to make the decision, even though we all ran unopposed, I think is a ludicrous comment. As I said, this topic, the idea, first of all, affordable housing and development was a huge issue when we all came onto the board coming off the South Street discussion. So it's certainly something that was talked about. I think how we all felt about that project in general was fairly well known. And then the first day we took office, the CPZR was announced. So clearly zoning comprehensive plan was going to be a big topic of discussion for this board for the many coming years. And I say that just to illustrate that if anyone wanted the opportunity to have a very direct say on that, there has been multiple elections since that for this board. This is a representative democracy. That's why we have elections. And I think that's important to say. Agree with us, disagree with us, but everything we do, we're here doing what we think is for the best of the village. And I'll leave it at that.
Sure. So I'll kind of reiterate what I think a lot of us have said. It's just thank you for everyone who's showed up and engaged in this tonight, previous nights, folks that have come previous times, CPZR meetings, whatever. It really is impressive to see everyone come out to wrestle with these things, to think deeply about these things, and to bring it up in this kind of very collegial way in the midst of what can be very divisive politics these days. So I really do appreciate it. I did just take a couple quick notes from some of the comments just this morning before I this evening, before I kind of get into a couple things, but I did want to point out the short-term rentals, as I mentioned earlier, that is a current active topic in front of the CPZR. We anticipate having a draft for people to see in short order. And the other thing is I heard a lot about water, stormwater. That is my other hat that I wear all the time. So on the side of zoning, I'm also on DPW water and sewer. That is cover stormwater. And the budget that we just passed includes the first chunk of money set aside for a comprehensive stormwater management plan for the entire village. That is not a short process. That includes site reviews and all manner of different engineering reports. Part of that is anticipated to be some local law or maybe zoning inclusion that would be driven from that kind of understanding. So there is a thread of execution on that as well. And I understand that I think to Jerry's point, people would like this to be a very linear process. I think you see the speed of government is rather slow. And if we did everything one step at a time, we'd be here a decade later and still not gotten anywhere. So I think there is a real need for putting a couple pieces in parallel. But it is very much understood that short-term rentals need to be thought about and addressed. It's very much understood that stormwater management is a real concern, especially on, that side of the village, but also in Keith's backyard, really everywhere. That we need to address. And so we really are taking that very seriously. I do have a longer, longer 5 or 10 minutes of kind of a background of how we got here. But maybe before I jump into that, I'll just state a couple things. I've heard from some of the comments here, and some of my conversation with folks in the audience that I would like to see, some adjustments made. Right? I think we've heard a lot of really good input. This plan can very much be improved by that input. So I think there's a lot to be done here. One of the things, first off, at the very top, that EDR study that we just passed, I don't think we pass anything until we see what that is. I think that makes our lives a lot easier and brings up the level of confidence in, did we get the lot sizes and whatnot really right? And for me, that means looking at infill. And so I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. But for me, I'm really looking for being able to subdivide lots so that we can have more for sale homes that are infill homes. And so this study, in my mind, will give us the right data to know, is that happening? Or have we gone too far? Have we not gone enough? We'll get a better sense from that study. I've heard the side setbacks on small lots can create awkward buildings. I think that makes total sense. I think we should look at that to show my cards. I think the side setbacks might be too big, especially on those smaller lots. But again, I think that EDR study will help us with that. I do think there are some simple ways to just write in what we kind of expect to see a house look like. I mean, most people expect a house to have a front door on the front. Let's write that in. I don't think it's going to break the bank in any way. And I think it's probably what we're all thinking. And so there's no harm in writing it in. I think when we talk about design standards, I think we all have different ideas in our head of what a design standard is. If you look at some villages and some communities, it's 200-page long of every possible different detail and nuance you can conceive of. I don't think there's a lot of interest in going that way, but I think there's some simple ways we can add a paragraph or two that kind of outlines some of the stuff we're thinking about here. And then finally, I think ADUs could be looked at again. I think some of the sizes might be a little bit too much. Some of the loopholes around building a house and converting it, building a building and converting it, I think we could look at some of that stuff. So I think there's some stuff we can make changes to. I don't think any of it's dramatic, but I think it's important and useful changes to be made. So anyhow, we can kind of get to where we take the whole conversation after, but I will try and get us a brief overview of kind of how we got here. So we're going to try something. And I apologize. It's not going to be big enough for everybody. So sorry, but we'll do what we can. So there's that. And I'll do this.
People flee when the charts come out.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not going to show anything. I'll kind of jabber on for a minute and then we'll show some things. So I think Rorden had mentioned this, like the approach we've used with the committee, I think is really actually a very wise one. It starts with bringing in someone from the planning board, the zoning board, this board, community members, and having a group that can work deeply and diligently on this and really build a lot of context. The downside is that there's no way to get this board to understand all the goings on the whole way through. So we're here now, and this is my kind of quick attempt to kind of speed run us through how did we get here. The mandate for the committee, right, was to take the comp plan and the issues that the community identified that were in the comp plan and then address them in our zoning. The best approach I've seen to how to address zoning is to really start it based in those identified issues that we're actually experiencing. The place I've struggled with zoning probably the most is in the hypotheticals. We can have hypotheticals all day, and it's very difficult to know where to go. It's my idea versus your idea. What seems likely to you, to me, it's all very different. And often they directly conflict with each other. So it's very difficult to have that sort of conversation, which is why I think it's really important to ground it in what are the actual issues we've identified. It's also pretty easy with everything online these days to find every sort of different idea from every city. And there are some really wonderful ideas on how to manage zoning and infill and all sorts of stuff from all over the United States, all over the world. And it's difficult to understand which one's going to work here and which one isn't until we really understand our kind of local context. So really all of this, it's a long way of saying, you know, we had to spend some time figuring out what is in the village. The comp plan calls out a couple key issues for residential zoning. It calls out lack of affordable housing and rental for sale housing and rental housing, and that rising household tax burden, right? We've talked about those. And then, you know, this is basically Roden's three things. It also calls out preserving our small town atmosphere, and that creates this balance and this tension between all these different pieces. How do we balance those? And that really is basically the whole work of the committee. That was really what the committee was focused on for the past 18 plus months. So the committee started with sitting down with the current zoning and trying to understand like where is this hurting or creating more of these issues, and where is it maybe, you know, well, where is it exacerbating these issues basically? And to me, really the issue is that the current zoning just prevents creating more for sale housing in the village. Most of the village lots in the village have a house on them. So if you're going to build any additional units, that's going to end up being a rental unit somewhere on the property. And so you're not looking for new for sale. There are some larger empty lots in the village. You know, like we look at the one on King and Seneca, that's a 16-acre lot out there. Our zoning, the most profitable use of that lot under our zoning is a 120 unit apartment building, one lot, one big building. That's buildable. That would be profitable. That's what would get built. We wouldn't see small little houses. We wouldn't see more of the village kind of built out like that. So to address those issues, we went back to the comp plan. What does the comp plan recommend? And it recommends multi-unit housing and an infill development. But to create that for sale infill development, we need to take the lots that have a house on them and subdivide some of them, not necessarily all of them, but some of them have to be able to be subdivided. That's how you create a new lot. That's how you create a for sale home. Under current zoning, 95% of the lots are too small to subdivide. So it's just not going to happen, right? We're going to see basically no additional new for sale homes, only additional apartments on people's properties. Except for those big lots, but those will be apartments too. So that's really what I drove that idea of reducing these lot dimensions. Is when you reduce those lot dimensions, now you start talking about maybe a few more lots can get subdivided, a few more lots can be for sale homes for people. But the question then is like, how do you do that while preserving that small town atmosphere? So there's really kind of two questions in my mind when it comes to the small town atmosphere. First is we heard a lot of multiple zones in the village. Can we think about how to slice and dice the village into different identifiable zones for different standards? And then second, how do we find that balance that preserves that small town atmosphere and that subdivision tension there? And so the first place to start really is to identify like what is our small town atmosphere so that we know what that is we're trying to preserve. And that's where the committee went through this lot by lot analysis. So I'll kind of walk through this briefly. And again, I apologize. This is probably too small for everybody, but I know the board does have it. So hopefully we can see a little bit more. The first thing to notice here is that the village really has a very diverse distribution of lots. So on the left-hand side is lot size of all the parcels in the village. And on the right side it's hard to see the numbers, but everywhere you see a white number is 2, 3, 4, or 5 unit. I mean, there's 1 or 2, 6 and 24 unit over in the side, but basically it's anywhere where it's more than 1 unit on the lot. And so the committee sat down with this and looked at it. And the reality is it's really hard to find a line, where, you know, all of a sudden we went from small lots to large lots or vice versa. Very difficult to find a line where you say over here is single family, over here is multiple units. They're scattered throughout the village. There are real character areas though, right? That is what is shown in the comp plan. And I think we can all point out that Tamarack feels different than Wig, it feels different than, you know, wherever else. But when you think about it, those really come down to they don't come down to lot sizes and they don't come down to number of units on a lot, which is what our zoning regulates. What it comes down to is architecture, which is not what our zoning regulates. And it comes down to front setbacks, actually. It's how close it is to the street, right? You think of a Tamarack, it's way off there. You think of a Wig, it's way up close. And that front setback is a thing that we actually very specifically regulate in the zoning. You have to be very tightly within your neighbors. So you have to look around you and say, my neighbor's here, your neighbor, my next neighbor here. All right, I got to be somewhere in between that. And so that really does start to build that neighborhood character throughout the village. It's very context sensitive. It, adjusts house to house around the village. So that really is a strong tool. And that's the tool that the committee leaned on when trying to come up with multiple zones instead of going to multiple zones, because we don't regulate architecture. Instead, we have this infill rule about front setbacks, and it means in Tamarack, you're farther back, in Wiggs, you're closer up. So that's how the committee kind of tried to address that, because this analysis really dissuaded the committee from pursuing more multiple zone type of regulation. And while we're talking about multiple units, I wanted to briefly say, like, it's important to know, like, what are we talking about when we talk about, right? I think there's been a lot of conversation of like, 2 units is 2 enormous houses on one property. That's not what we see in the village. And I understand there's value in making that more clear. And I think we can make it a little more clear, but the reality is this is what 2 units looks like in the building. It looks like a house. Some of them look a little bit more like 2 houses, put together, but it's basically a house. And then 3 and 4 units doesn't really look much different. So these are just like street view, or like I took a couple pictures where street view didn't go yet. They basically look like houses, right? So I think this is the kind of development I'm thinking of encouraging when I'm thinking about 4 units on a property, is more of this sort of development. So let's say so then we looked at the multiple zones and decided to kind of move away from that using other tools like the front setback side. And then the next piece, right, is to find that balance for lot subdivision that doesn't go further than the current small town character, right? So again, we went back to the lots and the lot analysis. And we started looking at some graphs, right? So this is the work of the committee, is looking at numbers. And what this is showing is, in the blue line is our current zoning, and the gray at the bottom is what exists in the village. And in between are different proposals. So the initial proposals in yellow, and you'll see it's more aggressive, especially in the 5 and up units. And that's been revised back out, right? So after public comment and hearings last year, we already reduced, increased the lot size requirements there. And we did, make some adjustments down on the other side here. But this is really based off of what do we see in the village, and then finding a line that sits just above that so that we can try and find that balance to create infill without going more than what we see in the village. And then it's also important to notice site plan, right? So like you get above 2 units, you go through site plan review, and that is an important tool in the toolbox. It's not anyone builds whatever they want, however many units. Site plans are a real process, and you have to go through it at that point. And then we did the same thing with lot frontages. So I'd mentioned when we talked about EDR, we do have a pretty good amount of lot frontages throughout the village, not 100%, but I think enough to get a good sense of what's out there. And so that was, again, the numbers that we used. Same kind of colors here. Blue is the current zoning, green is yellow is the original proposal. And you see that that's been, again, modified back up to the green line. And gray is what currently exists in the village. So that was, is going through that analysis, sitting down with the data, playing around with different scenarios, and coming up with what we think is a good balance between the two. And I know, certainly people are going to debate where the line should be, and is this the right line? And like I said, the committee already adjusted it. And, it could be further tweaked. But I think largely it's in the right ballpark, because it's based on what we actually see in the village. But, so of course, the real question then is like, what is this? And I think, we've heard it a lot. What does this actually look like in reality? And so I think the easy answer is for an empty lot, right? An empty lot, you don't have to contend with what's on the lot or anything. You can kind of do the math. And on like that 16-acre lot on the corner of King and Seneca, as a developer under this proposal could develop somewhere between around 100 and 250 units, depending on how many 1 to 4 unit buildings they put in there. And they would have to subdivide the land to like 70 to 100 lots. And that would allow all those lots to be eventually individually sold off. And it would look, in my mind, a lot like the village, massing wise. I'm sure it's not going to build something that looks like it's from 1890s, but structurally, massing wise, this looks very much like our current village development. Again, because it's built off of what we've done the analysis of. And it's more profitable, right? Because profits are based on how many units you can build. So this allows more units than a 120 unit apartment building. You could still build 120 apartment units on there. But I think you'll find that this incentive lines up with the developer's incentive by maximizing their profits. They'll build something with more of these units. The trickier question, and this gets back to the EDR stuff, is that how does this really impact infill? It's very tricky to know because you're dealing with lots that maybe people don't want to subdivide on. And you're also dealing with lots that have houses on them. And even if the lot could be subdivided in theory, the house could be positioned and actually end up subdividing that lot. And so that's why I'm actually, the more I've kind of sat with this and looked at the numbers again over the past few weeks, I'm real cautious that we've even hit the mark in my mind for where we want to be to create the kind of infill that we're looking for. But at this point, it's really kind of anyone's guess. And that's why I think the EDR data is really so important. So I think that's where at this point, I really want to hang my hat on basically that. And we'll see where that drives the conversation. That's kind of all I had on the presentation side, but I think the question for us as a board is kind of procedural at this point. I think we've heard a lot of good feedback. We've got EDR data. I think they're hoping to be able to get that done in a month. Do we want to have this conversation at this board level? Because I think at the end of the day, this is our conversation, our debate, and our vote to eventually make. Or do we think it's worth putting it back to the committee to kind of wrestle with some of the data, do some more analysis, come back with a tuned up version, and then have that conversation? And I really do think I can go either way on that. I genuinely don't really have a strong opinion either way, but I don't know if folks on the board might have an opinion of how we'd like to proceed.
Simply because I'm new and haven't sat through the minutia of all this work that you've done, which, by the way, thank you. I'll tell you, if anybody has any doubt about these gentlemen on this board and their commitment to this community and their love for the people, you're an idiot. Because I've seen a lot of things, and I'm not very happy with some of the things that people have insinuated about some of the members of this board. And I'm new on it, so it's easy for me to come in and say, where's this all coming from? Or maybe it's coming from a place of reality. It's not. I've been on boards before. I've been on very contentious boards. The ones that I was on in 2007 I don't even have words for it. And I'll tell you, these guys do so much work and they have so much commitment. And I just can't say enough about how privileged I am to be working with you. So because I'm new, I would like to see when that information comes back, how you feel about it going back to committee. I would be in favor of that and having it reviewed and come back. I think it would be very interesting to see that.
Yeah, and I'm
visual.
Share everything with this board for sure.
Yeah, and pardon me, I don't have COVID. I have allergies and I can't breathe, so I don't want anybody thinking they're being contaminated.
Got a pollen covered deck that says
But I am just like, there's no way out for this nose tonight, and I apologize.
So I actually think I'd like to try some kind of a hybrid approach where because I'm very interested in EDR's analysis when they're done with it. I think things like EDR comes back and says, spits out the data, here's what it says. Here's, what 6,500 square foot lots allow for subdivision. Here's what 9,000 square foot, whatever. I think that has to be a board decision. on the flip side, if the committee wants to take a look at ADU sizes, positioning relative to the main structure on the property, those kinds of things. Eventually, that'll be a board decision, but I think that the conversation, I guess what I'd love to see is, without creating, to Marcia's point, way too much more work for all of us. If the committee has a meeting once a month and we have a meeting once a month, we have like twice a month, I'd love to see immediate back and forth. Here's what the committee reviewed last week. Here's what we settled on. And here's your, here's what the board has to wrestle with and decide based on X, Y, and Z. And either, I don't want to duplicate the efforts, but I think we're at the point where more is better with respect to the research, review, and conversation.
Yeah.
Which is a far cry from saying, here's something, here's an old document, make it new.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm trying to kind of think through some of the things I'm looking to get. I think I can see that work quite well. One thought, I'll just throw out ideas. I'm not sure how I think about them yet. One thought is to have, I think we should all just get that EDR data and play around with it, and anyone can look at it any way they want to. I think one way I'm thinking is maybe the committee could propose a couple different even scenarios to this board and work through those options, as it were, work with EDR, and not only just have the underlying data, but that could be the maps that come back. And that'll help really visualize the issue. And I think, so maybe, I guess I'm kind of thinking like the committee can kind of almost take like a first pass of like, here's what some options on the table, and then we can kind of pick that final option. So maybe that is a good way of kind of tag teaming on that. And, if we want to, and I would welcome more input from this board too. And still feel weird saying that because we're all involved in it. Like, we should all be involved in like thinking about those scenarios, and we can even do a little bit of an iteration of like, does this seem like some interesting scenarios? Have EDR run them. We'll get maps. We can actually look at them. I think that could be interesting. An interesting approach. And yeah, I think that could be kind of a workable approach. I think the committee could also, to your point, work on some of the just the languagey things of front doors and a couple things. I guess overall, what I'm thinking is maybe the committee is kind of giving more little pieces instead of like go away, redo it, come back. It's a little more iterative. It's like, committee worked on these 3 things. How do we feel about it? Committee worked on this thing. How do we feel? Like, here's some options. How do we feel about it? And then I think we could hopefully move through that process with some speed. Is that kind of not getting what you're thinking?
I think so, because I think there's some reiterated concerns. A lot of the concerns are, come up very commonly.
Yeah.
So I think those would be easy to address right away.
Well, I think this is the way to avoid what we've discovered to be. I can't imagine doing this process without the committee going back 5 years, right?
Yeah.
But we have discovered that it is a shortcoming for this board to receive a deliverable and then have to review it in its entirety.
Yeah.
Without all of the back knowledge.
Right.
So certainly from this point forward, at least, as we flesh out the residential piece, I think that the back and forth will be very helpful.
Yeah.
Looking at some of my notes, the kinds of things that I wouldn't want to just kick it back to committee and say, come up with something else.
Right. No, I
things like, again, the ADU setbacks, should it be what you mentioned about, can you build something and then convert it into an ADU later? Should some, if there's, I don't want to get too hypotheticals that you mentioned, but if something could be done to avoid site plan that would have involved site plan, if we knew what was going to actually be built, you know, that kind of the language
Right.
part, as you mentioned it. While preserving the ability of, say, the single family residence that exists today. That wants to build one ADU with appropriate setbacks in the appropriate location relative to the structure for the appropriate size. That is part of the infill that you're looking for.
Yeah.
So there's a parsing of the language piece and of the potential based on what someone might want to do.
Well, I think the ADU and the infill stuff has a lot of intertwined pieces. So that's the thing I'm most curious about. I don't want the committee just to kind of go away on the ADU piece and come back. I know that's not really what you're saying, but I think there's something like, even now, I think maybe next week, the committee could start talking about some of that language is about your building should look to the front road and should have a front door on that kind of a thing. And then I think what I'd like to see is get that data from EDR, and then we can kind of start talking about, right, what are the right side setbacks, what are the right lot sizes, and then I think that'll also help build into this ADU conversation, and so we can kind of take those a little bit
And
as a
tweak
group.
maybe some of the parking language a little bit.
Yeah, I think we can start looking
Yeah.
at both of those. I just to set expectations, I think I'd like to hold off getting too deep in the weeds on ADUs until we have more of that
Right.
lot size stuff. But I think once we get that, we can start kind of going to town on both pieces.
If I may add something from the perspective of the clerk's office, which is fundamentally to be available to the public, to give them information. And I think that while if I'm tracking, it sounds like there's gonna be maybe a little bit more transparency in the process in addition to going to a CPZR, reading the minutes or looking at the tape. So if you generate synopsis or things that you want to make sure get surfaced on the webpage or on a newsletter or documents now, they're, maps or things like, just to make sure that we can do our best from the clerk's perspective to share information so that people can stay up to date. Obviously, come to every board meeting, always.
Or I might.
Bring snacks. And also that they can continue to comment at any time through the public comment email or dropping something off as they're digesting material. Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you say EDR's timeline was on the data?
They're hoping to get it done by the end of the month.
Ooh.
That was,
Yeah.
and then do the visualization pieces in June was what they had in the proposal there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm thinking like the next CBZR, I'd actually honestly probably adjust the commercial zoning and hold off on that and start looking at some of the residential stuff we can work on right away. And then once we get something from EDR, we'll probably have it enough time to look around, and then we can have CPR look at it in June. That might push out some of the short-term rental conversation, but I think that's fine to, we'll figure out how to balance our time.
Okay. Any other board comments on or discussion on anything zoning related? When does CPZR meet again?
Not Monday. It's the Monday between our two. So that's third Monday or whatever that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Item number 8, new business. We have an opportunity to repurpose Chief Nelson's police chief vehicle. We have an opportunity to repurpose Chief Nelson's police chief vehicle to the EMS department for use as quote unquote the fly car.
Oh, it's happening.
I hate that term because everybody thinks fly car is like salt. You sprinkle a little fly car on it and it makes everything taste better. But it does allow for a rapid response of particularly our EMS administrator, when someone else is on the ambulance crew. So that's something that Chief Nelson and Joel have been working together on. We just need to authorize that since it is a department change, which means probably an insurance category and coverage change. And so I would entertain a motion to authorize the repurposing of the police chief's Tahoe to the EMS department as a rapid response vehicle.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions about it?
So I'm gonna miss, were we buying a replacement? Was that what we were talking about with the Tahoe? Or is that a different Tahoe that you were in your update?
No, that was like a vehicle, like a squad car.
Okay.
But yeah, there would be another vehicle for chief.
So we'll move this, the idea is to move it to EMS and then backfill the.
This
police.
Tahoe will be paid off in 30 weeks.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, that's what I was gonna ask, is it paid for?
The expense line
Okay.
for chief
Hmm,
would theoretically drop off unless we get chief
I see.
a replacement vehicle.
Got it. Makes sense. Okay. Yeah. I like that. That's whoever came up with that clever thinking.
Any other questions?
No.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to repurpose the Trumansburg Police Department Chief's vehicle to the EMS department as a rapid response vehicle. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes, and Jesse, you'll let chief know tomorrow, please.
Betcha.
Where did FLX go?
Oh, I put it, oh, that's what I did. Sorry, it's 60 now. That's why we're all confused. I moved the wrong thing under my numbers. Have you found it yet?
Where did you move to?
It should still be in that folder, but just under 6D, complete with DocuSign.
Oh, probably.
Complete with
Yeah.
documents.
So our website services company would like to actually get our signature on some documents that say they are our website services company. The contract is month to month, pricing stays the same. And they've asked that we please sign this. Because I don't think we've ever signed it.
I don't think we have either. They are getting to the point where they have enough clients that they realize maybe they should get some signatures. So they're successful. They're doing well. We should sign some things.
Maybe you ought to have a contract.
So I would entertain a motion to authorize me to sign this contract with FLX websites.
So moved.
Second. Any questions?
I tried to forward the DocuSign to you. Did that go the right way?
Well, I'll look into that tomorrow. It's
Okay.
possible that I might be mixed in
Okay.
too, so we'll check that out.
If we need to
Tuesday signing.
resend it anywhere, I'm happy to.
Okay.
Basically, it came through a digital signature. So if we want to do it that way, we can make that work. If not, there's a printout here.
Okay.
You could mail it.
Okay.
But who mails things these days?
Any other questions? Hearing none, and all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll figure that out tomorrow, how to sign it.
Okay.
Last item of new business is we have a proposal from MRB Group for assistance with the administration of the zero emission vehicle grant award. The total, they're going to bill us hourly for a dollar amount not to exceed a total of $3,500. What I'd like to do, so Ben Carver, I was hoping he'd be here tonight. There is some question about what the next steps are relative to the other grant we've applied for, as well as if we don't get that grant, how much of this can we move forward with without additional funds? So whether this actually moves forward or not, I mean, we have the grant money. Be ashamed to not spend it.
Are we allowed to do less than the amount?
That's part of the question.
Yeah.
So that whole process is still a little bit up in the air. But I think I'd like to have approval to have MRB help us administer this portion of it, should we move forward.
Yeah.
And there is a possibility that if we're short on money, you know, when we reach out to other agencies or other participants to help make up that shortfall. So, but with respect to the grant piece itself.
So what you're asking is, we got the grant for 188,000, right? For 4 level 2s and 2 fast chargers. And what you're gonna ask is, if we don't get the, can we do less than that? If
We do 2 and 1 or
Right,
whatever.
right,
4 level 2s and
Right.
fast chargers cost more than the 180.
right. So you're asking, can we, worst case scenario?
That's part of the question. The other part of the question is if the other grant comes in, then it's not an issue.
Right,
If there's, if there are other programs that might be able to dovetail with this, that's all part of it. But this particular grant itself has its own rules from DEC with respect to how the money is managed. And so we need someone to
to administrate that, okay.
Theoretically, we could try to do it in-house, but I don't want Jessica and Jen running it out
Let's leave it to the press.
with their hair on fire. So I would entertain a motion to authorize me to sign this proposal for professional services with MRB for the administration of the DEC's zero emission vehicle grant award for a cost not to exceed $3,500.
So moved.
Second,
Give it to Marcia. Any other questions?
Buzzers. You just like, no.
like a Jeopardy.
Well, yeah, right. Who gets in first?
Family Feud. Any other questions or thoughts on any of this? No. Hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Do we have any other items of new business? Hearing none, then that takes us to our second public comment period. We are going to keep this one shorter, but if you do have anything that you'd like to say, now is your opportunity.
Janice Broussard, 13 South Street, and I want to emphasize that because my lot is 49 feet wide. That allows, we're 5 feet off of the line on the north side of the house. And the garage, which was the first one built in Trumansburg in the early 1900s for a car, is 1 foot off. Now try to paint that side of the building is a little tricky. So if anybody really wants to know what 49 feet looks like, walk by my house, 13 South Street, right over here, and you will see. We have a driveway to the side. If you can go all the way to the back, you can get out of the car. But if you're halfway back, you can't get out of the driver's side. And then you have to go in the yard next door to get out of the car, to get back on the driveway to go in. So I would just invite you all to look at that carefully to see what 49 feet, I can't imagine what 40 feet would look like. Another comment was that we had a historic home tour in Trumansburg a few years ago, and I got a letter in the mail and asking me to be on the tour. So I called them up and I said, "Did you send this to everybody in the village?" And they said, "No, the town historian wanted you to be on the tour because these houses were built, not our particular one, but we have an Italianate house, and it was built by the Gregg and Pease foundries for their workers. 60 of them were built, and not that many still exist because it burned down because they had stoves in the middle of the thing. Fires, a little bit of a problem, but they cost $2,000 and their workers could pay for that in 5 years' time. So this tour that I took and did discuss that called that the affordable housing in Trumansburg were the Italianates. And if you go into the Italianates, they all are exactly the same entryway, same railing, same windows, same whatever. Ours happened to be built as a wedding gift. And we've coped with it, but it's not without flaws. And I would just invite anybody to look at that and realize what 49 feet looks like. Okay, that's all I have to say. And I gotta go home because I'm a lot of pain again.
Thank you.
I'll have a couple quick things to say. I'll try to do it without saying any bad words relative to anybody on the table or anybody in the audience. Nope. Said I have a few things to say. They're quick. I'll try to do it without saying any bad words toward anybody at the table or anybody in the audience. I want to say thank you. A little background. I started as an employee working for the city of Syracuse on zoning ordinances so long ago, I don't want to age myself. And then for Onondaga County, and then I worked as a private consultant. And for quite a few small municipalities, I was the consultant that helped the town of Nelson get their first zoning ordinance in place. Looked like Caroline, folks. There were cops in the parking lot. There were cops in the meeting room. Cops followed me all the way to Casanova when I left. It was bad. So I've seen a lot of zoning stuff. Foolishly enough, I just signed up for the Town of Ulysses Comprehensive Planning Committee. So it guarantees me at least another 3 years. I'm getting past 50 years of this stuff. So there we go. I'm very impressed with what's been done. I was Kathy was still here, so I can compliment more of the committee members. And Ben, you've certainly done a wonderful job. I know when people come and try to talk in 3 minutes, they come with a lot of worry about something in particular usually, and that kind of gets to be their theme. I think nearly everybody is as thankful as I am. When you get into something brand new, it's a really good idea to imagine the bad having to do with it. What if it all goes wrong? Look around and try to understand what goes wrong relative to a particular thing. And I'm talking about short-term rentals. Short-term rentals have to be controlled before this ordinance goes through. I know the effort is in that direction. Can't say it too strongly. I hear in this village right now, a speculator can buy a single-family house with only a building permit, divided into a 2-family house. And when the ordinance comes in, put in an ADU. Now you've got 3 short-term rental potentials there. This is enough to bring on a bunch of speculators. I heard a couple of times the word corporation used as if some corporation in Baltimore will never discover us. Along Cuyahoga Lake and Seneca Lake, a whole bunch of properties have been bought for a lot more than $250,000, like for $700,000 and $800,000, and made into short-term rentals with a couple new buildings next to them. You can drive along both lake shores and see the stuff going on. These people are not from Baltimore. They're from Ithaca, Watkins Glen. These are people who have been in the rental business and so forth for years. They throw together little partnerships and they blow $2 million on something. And you know, that's what's going on. Let me tell you the bad part. I haven't got to that yet. The bad part is, you may not have noticed, or you may have, when you travel to vacation venues, there are a lot of people who are there for one thing. They're there for drugs. They get away from their employers, they get away from their family, they get out of their community, and they go to someplace where they can just do it. When that happens, and it happens in places where a lot of short-term rentals are going on, that traffic of drugs goes everywhere in the community. It's a very bad thing comes with these rental units. As I said, I think it's important to look at the really ugly when you look at something new that's coming toward us. You know, we all hope it never goes there. Keith, I've heard you. I'm not arguing against the careful things that you've said. I'm just saying, you know, this is the really bad side of it. You can go places and see it. Go to Cancun. Oh my God, you know.
Anyone else?
Tom Pepe, some of you know me, some of you don't, but. Oh, sure. Tom Pepe, how's that?
Good.
Okay, sorry about that. Well, it was, I think you made the analogy about the house bought for $50,000 in 1984 would, however much you said it would be worth today, hundreds of thousands. I don't remember specifically, but true. But it also doesn't take into account 4 years worth of inflation that would have been on both sides. So I don't know what the numbers are, but it could be not quite as drastic as 50,000 to 400,000, in terms of relative dollars versus house prices in 1980 or 82 or whatever it was.
I have those numbers if you're ever interested.
Oh, okay. Well, is it that? Well,
Not close.
what's not close?
Increase in housing prices far outpaces the pace of inflation over the last, well, since World War II.
Yeah, but I mean, not from 50,000. It went up some, right?
So $50,000 in 1980 today would be, I'd have to do the math, but it's 2.75% compounded would be your rate of inflation.
Oh, well, that's,
You wouldn't get to 400,000.
oh, I thought that's the number, some kind of number like that you use, but I understand what you're saying.
My only point is that housing values
Right.
have far exceeded the rate of inflation over the same time
Okay,
period.
but they are mitigated somewhat by that. So saying 50,000 versus 400,000, not quite correct.
No, it's correct. I'll stand by my math and I'll stand by my financial, but go on, continue.
I think I know the answer to this because you may have answered it already, but will lot sizes on established neighborhoods be kept the same? You don't need to answer it now, I guess, but I had sent an email to you and Jessica. I believe you were on it too. So only a few days ago. So Jessica suggested I step up and do this now. So I have an answer now.
The current proposal would change lot sizes, allowable lot sizes. That's part of the discussion.
Existing ones, though.
You'll have to clarify the question.
The lot sizes on pick a street, Pennsylvania Avenue, or something like 100 by 150. Will those be changed now, or does it require the house to be sold and then redone, or what? I mean, I understand going forward, you may change lot sizes in the village, but one person decides to sell a house, does the next person, the neighbors to that lot are subjected to apartment houses or anything like that? By the new zoning?
I guess I'm still not following. So if a lot size is 12,000 square feet today,
Mhm.
it'll still be 12,000 square feet. The parcel is the parcel.
Yeah, sure. But will the next person who goes in, a developer,
Will
be
they
able to build multiple units?
Subdivide it? Well, that'll depend on the setbacks and all of the other things that we're having EDR do this analysis on. Whether it could be subdivided or not is the question.
Why couldn't it be subdivided?
You want to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, this is all hypothetical, so it depends on what kind of lot you're talking about, how wide is the lot, what's the size of the lot. If it can be subdivided, depends on where the house is, if the house is in the middle of the lot. So I guess it helps to talk about a specific lot, and we could talk about what it looks like on that lot.
Also, I'm
That's
not
why
sure.
that study will be very important that
Right.
they do so that we. can-
And I'm not sure, Tom, you were here when the board talked about hiring EDR to do a study of and make a map of all the lots and what it could look like based on proposed zoning, they just approved that happening. So then there'll be a visual. I don't remember. I don't know if you were here
I
when they said that.
heard some of that
Yeah.
along the way, but I didn't get here.
That
I
would
thought it
answer.
started at 7:30. Actually, I was even late for that, but
Yeah.
I just drove in from Maryland today, so.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess I'm still saying somebody owns two houses and the house in the middle sells, and the person who buys it or the company who buys it, whoever decides to put in an apartment building there. That's going to be allowable. That detracts from the value of the neighboring houses.
So you're asking me if someone buys a house and bulldozes it
Sure.
and then wants to subdivide?
I
Well,
guess.
that would depend on what
Is that how you have to do it? But I mean, it could happen.
theoretically it could happen today. You ask me a question.
The board can choose to.
I'm a sucker for answering questions. If you've stayed this long, we'll answer.
So any kind of building could be erected there, apartments, rental apartments.
Today it could be, yes.
Today?
Yeah, absolutely. If the lot size was large enough and someone wanted to bulldoze the house next to you, they could put up an apartment building.
It's 12,000%.
It's 15 today.
Okay, he's even allowed.
But the point being that a lot of these things are allowable today based on current lot size. No one does it because they wouldn't make money.
Ah, okay. Well, that's a good part of the answer. Thank you.
I mean, it doesn't make, the reason why we don't see the things happening, to Ben's point earlier, we don't see a lot of the things happening in the village that could happen
Mhm.
is because they are not financially feasible.
Right.
And they wouldn't be under the proposal either,
Is that right? Oh, okay. I guess I didn't understand that.
not at $400 a square foot.
I guess then, man, I guess that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom.
I did send in to you guys, so.
Okay.
If you would be so kind to answer, that's a good, speaking into a mic.
Any other public comment? Do we have need of an executive session?
Oh, please now.
All right. Then I would entertain.
It's on the agenda, but no.
Yeah.
It's on the agenda, but no.
Just our standing.
It's
Standard Taylor law.
Standard Taylor law. It's
If
always.
we have no need of executive session, then I would entertain a motion.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Yes. Yes, all favor.
If no one's opposed, we will stand adjourned.
9:46.